Wir können die Wahrheit nicht verfälschen, unserer Perspektive oder politischer Erzählung voranzutreiben. We cannot misrepresent the truth to further our perspective or political narrative. So I see there was a big protest in what I will call the Esplanade, but as much as I dearly love my auntie, dearly love her, I would like to add a little clarity and expound some truth about what was said during that protest. So bear with me a little. While many would have appreciated all the magnificent things that Auntie Lyra and others would have done during the 70s, protesting against the Gary administration of the time, one has to put some clarity to the subsequent rule of the revolution, because they came along for all the excesses that they talked about that Gary committed during his reign. They came along and they made Sir Eric Matthew Gary look like a saint. That is facts, indisputable facts. The record is clear. The revolution jailed over 3,000 individuals, Grenadians, your people, okay? Many of them were interned at Hopeville. Interestingly enough, right where you're planning to put the so-called teaching and research hospital, the Polaris White Elephant, is where many Grenadians were interned, okay, as prisoners. And some very horrible things were done to them, okay? So let's not get sentimental and let's not romanticize the PRG government, the 4.5 years PRG government. If you look at the history of Grenada, in truth and in fact, that PRG revolution is actually a very, very tiny bit of its history, okay? And those who romanticize it and those who want to promote it as the greatest thing that ever happened to Grenada, that, my friends, is a misrepresentation and a downright untruth. And while I am so happy that my dear auntie can express her First Amendment right and protest, at the same time, we have to be clear about the reality and the truth of the situation. So again, let's not romanticize the PRG. If we truly want to educate the youth of Grenada, we have to start from a basis of truth. Now, I want to make it very clear. In terms of this impending decision that the Grenadian government has to make, I am not advocating on anyone's behalf, but I want to ensure that there is clarity on this issue. The Grenadian government will ultimately make their decision. At the same time, we cannot spread a false narrative on the issue. Again, this is a formal request from a nation that perceives Grenada as a friendly nation. There is nothing unusual about that request. And in some respects, I think we're politicizing the issue. So for all that is being said, and some are saying that we need not worry of any economic implications of that decision. But that is entirely untrue. Now I will give you a little story to add some clarity. That same PRG government, one of the reasons that PRG government collapsed, majorly one of the reasons, is because of economic problems, major economic problems, okay, that it faced just prior to the collapse. A matter of fact, that economic situation, that dire economic situation, precipitated, some may say, the collapse of the PRG government. Just ask the then finance minister. Just ask the then vice prime minister. He would tell you. He's alleged to have made a statement towards the end that, hey, what all you want me to do? Pull rabbits out the hat? As to express his frustration with the downturn in the economy, and they were expecting him, as an economist, to do some voodoo economics and solve all the economic problems that the PRG at the time faced. So let's not be all sentimental about this now. And that created a serious problem. A matter of fact, there was also an issue about the support for the revolution. After a while, and the initial excitement and honeymoon, Grenadians themselves was actually losing interest. That is what they said. Grenadians' interest in the PRG was starting to wane. Grenadians' interest in the PRG was starting to fade. That is a fact. And that is why, in some respects, they turned on each other. A matter of fact, it is alleged that the sort of support, economic support, that they were getting from external sources was also waning. So don't let anyone fool you about this. This is facts that I want you, the Grenadian youth, to be exposed to and to understand so that you can have some clarity about all of this issue and the connection. So again, some may say that the economic crisis that was faced by the PRG government precipitated a political crisis and a blame game. A matter of fact, it is alleged that they thought it was because of some Marxist-Leninist ideology that was not being properly followed, or they weren't adopting or interpreting the Marxist-Leninist ideology properly and implementing it properly. And of course, they turned to the intellectuals in the party. Okay? And of course, we know who at the time was seen as the biggest intellectual in Marxist-Leninist philosophy. That is one of the reasons that these officer cadres might have also had a certain attraction, a certain respect for the certain individual who was seen as the intellectual on the Marxist-Leninist philosophy. And of course, toppled with their own allegiances and their personal ambition and stuff. So, if we want to talk about this, let's be clear. And again, I want to add a little clarity to the issue of monitoring Grenadians. There was some mention that, oh, well, this radar system, if installed on Grenada, can be used to monitor Grenadians locally. And that was expressed as a concern. But let me say, and let me make it very clear, okay? Anybody or any nation or any organization or institution that wants to monitor Grenadians does not have to come physically on Grenada. A matter of fact, right now, I don't know, is it 100,000, 110,000 Grenadians? They can stay. A kid probably can stay in his home with a home computer and can monitor all the conversations and everything that is being said by every Grenadian in Grenada. So that concern, I would say in some respects, is a bit fanciful. Nowadays days, you have a cell phone. As long as you have a cell phone in your hand, okay, everything you say, everything you do, everywhere you go, can be monitored. So if that is a real concern, that we believe that installing a radar on Grenada would actually increase the monitoring of Grenadians, forget about it. That's not the case. That should be the least of our concern. A matter of fact, a lot of you may know, a radar system is more for the military applications. Obviously, for finding targets, for coordination of offensive and defensive weapon systems, target finding, and to provide some sort of overall visibility where you don't get actual visibility. That, some of the functions of the radar system. So it is an integral part of the integration of your military systems. It is quite interesting for all the perception that people are having right now about the United States putting a radar on Grenada. No one expressed alarm and concern about all the military hardware that came to Grenada in the period 79 to 83. No one expressed concern about that. A matter of fact, they could not express concern about it. Because as I have said in previous videos, by the point of a gun, they would have been hauled up to Richmond Hill, or they would have been hauled away to Hopeville. That is a fact. There are people who are hauled away for saying the simplest of things. Okay? There were Rastas who were hauled away for saying, look, we don't deal with Babylon. Okay? And that was seen as a counter-revolutionary statement. And they were hauled away. So let's not be sentimental about this. Let me tell you something. It's so interesting that recently a friend and I, okay, was having some chats about the events of October 19, because that friend saw me that day. I saw them that day, okay, in the neighborhood. And we were just, reliving and, talking about some of the things, okay? Let me tell you something. These people, don't let them fool you, okay? Anybody remember the youth man that went to GBSS? Do you guys know the background story of what happened to him? Allegedly being given a paper bag to deliver to someone and it exploded on him? How about that? Anybody talks about that? Anybody talks about the chaos they were trying to sow in the market square? And their quote-unquote counterintelligence unit? All the things they were doing? Listen, let's stop, okay? Let us stop. Because if we want to be honest and we want to be straightforward about all that happened in that period, and you're trying to romanticize what happened in the period, we're not going to fall for that. We're not going to romanticize what happened in that period. Okay? We're not going to do that.